조지 오웰, 애니멀 팜, Chapter 4. By the last summer, the news what had happened on Animal Farm had spread across half the country. Every day, Snowball and Napoleon sent a flight of pigeons whose instructions were to mingle with the animals to neighboring farms, tell them the story of the revolution, and teach them the tune of Beast of England. Most of this time, Mr. Jones had spent sitting in the room of the Red Lion at Wellington, complaining to anyone who would listen of the monstrous injustice he had suffered in being torn out of his property by a pack of good-for-nothing animals. The other farmers sympathized in principle, but they did not at first give him much help. At heart, each of them was secretly wondering whether he could not somehow turn John's misfortune to his own advantage. It was lucky that the owners of the two farms which adjoined Animal Farm were on permanently bad terms. One of them, which was named Foxwood, was a large, neglected, old-fashioned farm, much overgrown by woodland, with all its pasture worn out and its hedges in the disgraceful condition. Its owner, Mr. Pillington, was an easygoing gentleman farmer who spent most of his time in fishing and hunting according to the season. The other farm, which was called Pinchfield, was smaller and better kept. Its owner was Miss Frederick, the tough-shirted man, perpetually involved in lawsuits, is the name for driving hard bargain. These two disliked each other so much that it was difficult for them to come to any agreement, even in defense of their own interest. Nevertheless, they were both thoroughly frightened by the rebellion of the Animal Farm and very anxious to prevent their own animal from learning too much about. At first, they pretended to laugh at scorn the idea of animal managing a farm for themselves. The whole thing would be over in a fortnight, they said. They put it about that the animal on the manor farm, they insisted on calling it the manor farm, they would not tolerate the name Animal Farm, were perpetually fighting among themselves and were also rapidly starving to death. And time passed, and animal had evidently not starved to death. Frederick and Pillington changed their tune and began to talk of the terrible wickedness and now flourished on Animal Farm. It was given out the animals were practiced cannibalism, tortured one another with red hog horse food, and had their females in common. This was what came of rebelling against the law of nature, Frederick and Pickington said. However, these stories were never fully believed. Rumor of the wonderful farm where the human being had been torn out and animals managed their own affairs continued to cultivate in vague and distorted form, and throughout that year a wave of rebellionists ran through the countryside. Bull, which had always been tractable, suddenly turned savage. Sheep broke down hedges and devoured the clover. Cows kicked the fair over. Hunters refused their pens and shot their leader on the other side. After all, the tune and even the word of Beast of England were known everywhere. It had spread at a astonishing speed. The human being could not contain their rage which, when they heard this song, though they pretend to think it merely ridiculous. They could not understand, they said, how even an animal could bring themselves to sing such contemptible rubbish. Any animal could sing. It was given flogging on the spot. and wet. The song was irrepressible. The blackbird whistled in the hedge. The pigeon cooed in the elm. It got into the din of the smithy and the tune of the church bells. And when the human beings listened to it, they secretly trembled, hearing in it a prophecy of their future doom. Early in October, when the corn was cut and stalked, and some of it was already threshed, a flight of pigeons came whirling through the air and aligned in the yard of Animal Farm in the wildest excitement. John and all his men, with the help of a dozen others from Foxwood and Pinchfield, they entered the five-barred gate and were coming up the cart track that led to the farm. They were all carrying sticks except Jones, who was marching ahead with a gun in his hand. Obviously, they were going to attempt the recapture of the farm. This had long been expected. All preparations had been made. Snowball, who was started an old book of Julius Caesar's campaigns, which he had found in the farmhouse, was in charge of the defensive operation. He gave his order quickly, and in a couple of minutes, every animal was at his post. As the human being approached the farm building, Snowball launched his first attack. All of pigeon to number of the 35 flew to and flew over the woman's head and muted up from midair. And while the men were dealing with this, the goose was who had been hiding behind the hedge, rushed out and pecked viciously at the calves of their legs. However, this was only a light skirmishing manucure, intended to create a little disorder, and the men usually drove the geese off with their sticks. Snowball now launched his second line of attack. Muriel, Benjamin, and all of the sheep, with Snowball at the head of them, rushed forward and prodded and butted the men from every side, while Benjamin turned around and rushed at them with small hoops. But once again the men with their sticks and their hobnails boots were too strong for them, and suddenly, at a squall from Snowball, with which was a signal for retreat, all the animals turned and fled through the gateway into the yard. The men gave a shout of triumph. They saw, as they imagined, their enemies in flight, and they rushed after them in disorder. This was just what Snowball had intended. As soon as they were well inside the yard, the 3 horses, the 3 cows, and the rest of the pig, who had been lying in ambush in the cowshed, suddenly emerged in their lair, cutting them off. Snowball now gave the signal of the charge. He himself dashed straight for John. John saw him coming, raised his gun, and fired. The fellows scored blood streaks along Snowball back, and a sheep dropped dead. Without halting for an instant, Snowball flung his fifth stone against John's leg. John was hurled into the pile of dung, and his gun flew out of his hand. But the most terrifying spectacle of all was a boxer rearing up his hind legs and striking out his green iron shod hoofs like a stallion. His very first blow took a stab lad from Foxwood on the skull and stretched him lifeless in the mud. At the sight, several men dropped their sticks and tried to run. Panic overtook them, and the next moment all the animals together were chasing them round and round the yard. They were gored, kicked, bitten, trampled on. There was not an animal on the farm that did not take vengeance on them after his own fashion. Even the cat suddenly leaped up the roof onto Cowman's shoulder and sank a claw in his neck, at which he yelled horribly. At the moment when the opened clear, the men were glad enough to rush out of the yard and make a bolt for the main road. And so within 5 minutes of their invasion, they were in ignominious retreat by the same words as they had come. It was a plague of geese hissing after them and pecking at their calves all the way. All the men were gone except one. Back in the yard, Boxer was pawing with his hoof at the stablet who lay face down in the mud, trying to turn him over. The boy did not stir. He's dead, said the Boxer sorrowfully. I no intend to think that. I forgot that I was wearing iron shoes. Who will believe that I did not do this on purpose? No, sentimentally, comrade, cried Snowball, from whose wounded blood was still dripping. War is war. The only good human being is a dead one. I have no wish to take a life, not even human life, repeated the Box, and his eyes were full of tears. Where is Molly? Exclaimed somebody. Molly, in fact, was missing. For a moment there was a great alarm. It was feared that the man might have harmed her in some way, or even carried her off with them. In the end, however, she was found hiding in her stall with her head buried among the hay in the mangle. She had taken to flight as soon as the gun went up. And when the others came back from looking for her, it was to find that the stable lad, whose impact was only stunned, had already recovered and made up. The animal had now reassembled in the wildest excitement, which recounting his own exploit in the battle at the top of his voice. The impromptu celebration of the victory was held immediately. The flag was run up, and Beast of England was sung a number of times. Then the ship who had been killed was given a solemn funeral. The wholesome bush being planted on her grave. At the At the graveside, Snowball made a little speech, emphasizing the need for all animals to be ready to die for animal farm if need be. The animal decided unanimously to create a military decoration. Animal hero first class, which was conferred there and then Snowball and Boxer. It consisted of a brass medal. They were really some old horse brasses which had been found in the harness room, to be worn on Sunday and holiday. There was also Animal Hero second class, which was conferred posthumously on the dead ship. There was much discussion as to what the battle should be called. In the end, it was named the Battle of the Cowshed, since that was where the ambush had been sprung. Mr. Jones's gun had been found lying in the mud, and it was known that there was a supply of cartridges in the farmhouse. It was decided to set the gun up at the foot of the flagstaff, like a piece of artillery, and to fire it twice a year, once on October the 12th, the anniversary of the Battle of the Cowshed, and once on Midsummer Day, the anniversary of the rebellion.